This week, a flare-up of violence between Israel and Palestine took the world by surprise. As the news broke, a decision was made by the European Commission to cut all aid to Palestine. Ireland was one of only 4 countries that immediately criticised the Commission's decision, stating that there was no legal basis for the action and that they do not support a suspension of aid. EU foreign ministers have since reversed the Commission's decision. While it may be surprising that a small island country on the edge of the continent will put its head above the parapet for a nation over 2,000 miles away, Ireland has always had a unique track record of backing Palestinian causes throughout its history. But the question remains, why does Ireland support Palestine? Before we start, if you haven't already, hit the bell icon and subscribe to the channel. Ireland's relationship with Palestine is, for the most part, one of solidarity, with both states having experienced British colonialism as well as partition in their histories. The two states have unique parallels, having played host to armed struggle and civil rights movements, with many central figures and organisations playing a role in the history of both. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration, a decree by the British government in support of the creation of a Jewish homeland, was issued. This was lauded by Ronald Storrs, the first British military governor of Jerusalem, as the creation of a little loyal Jewish Ulster, referencing Ireland's heavily Protestant northern province. Winston Churchill, then colonial secretary of the British Empire, advocated that a picked force of white gendarmerie be established in Palestine to help control the province. In April 1922, 650 former auxiliaries and Black and Tans, an infamous paramilitary group used to carry out vicious crackdowns in the Irish War of Independence, arrived in Haifa in order to take part. This influx of British auxiliaries to Palestine was no coincidence. Henry Hugh Tudor, formerly Chief of Police in Ireland, had become the Inspector General of Police and Prisons in Palestine. Tudor packed the ranks of his colonial force with former Black and Tans until they made up 75 to 95% of the newly formed British Gendarmerie. This force was dissolved in 1926, but many former members filtered into the colonial Palestinian police. Irish and Palestinian politics would intersect in a much more tangible way, however, during the Troubles. As the IRA waged a campaign against British forces in Northern Ireland, they sought out help from other international guerrilla groups. One such group was the PLO, or Palestinian Liberation Organisation. The PLO, founded in 1964, engaged in armed struggle against the Israeli state, rejecting the Balfour Declaration and the existence of the Israeli state as a whole. The PLO demanded that Palestinian refugees be allowed to return to their homes and insisted that the Palestinian people had a legal right to their homeland. The IRA formed close ties with this organisation, with IRA volunteers training in PLO training camps in the Middle East, as well as receiving weapons. The IRA also received significant support from Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, who bankrolled resistance movements including the PLO. This relationship would create a sense of solidarity between the two causes, with Belfast still sporting murals supporting Palestinian resistance and Irish Republicans still heavily in favour of Palestinian sovereignty. This affinity for the Palestinian cause is also present among members of the Irish diaspora, with Celtic FC fans in Scotland often flying the Palestinian flag alongside the tricolour at matches. For many, the Irish struggle and the Palestinian struggle are one and the same. On the flip side, loyalists in the north favour Israel, burning Palestinian flags alongside tricolours on the 12th of July. Israeli flags and murals can often be seen in loyalist areas, flying alongside Ulster banners and Union Jacks. In a more official capacity, Ireland has also shown sympathy for the Palestinian plight. In the aftermath of the Six-Day War, Frank Aiken, Minister for External Affairs, as well as ex-Chief of Staff of the anti-treaty IRA, called the fate of the Palestinian Arab refugees the main and most pressing objective of Irish policy in the Middle East, in the eyes of the Irish government. In 1980, Ireland was the first member of the EEC, the precursor to the EU, to recognise the Palestinian Liberation Organisation, as well as calling for the withdrawal of Israel from all territory occupied since the 1967 conflict. Ireland only extended de jure recognition to Israel in 1963, 15 years after the birth of the state. It was also the last EU nation to allow an Israeli embassy to open, in 1993. Relations between the Irish and Israeli governments soured with the war in Lebanon that erupted in 1978, with Ireland contributing some 40,000 troops to the UN peacekeeping force in the country over the duration of the war. Israeli-backed Christian militias frequently attacked UN positions, with the Irish government attributing some 15 deaths directly and indirectly to Israel, and Irish peacekeepers were alleged to have been mistreated by the IDF on multiple occasions. Numerous government officials have also visited Palestine in an official capacity, with Taoiseach Bertie Ahern making a 2-day trip to Gaza in 1999. including a visit to Jabalia refugee camp and meeting with Yasser Arafat, the leader of the PLO. Then Foreign Affairs Minister Brian Cowen also met with Arafat in his visit to the region at the height of the Second Intifada in 2003. In 2010, the Irish vessel Rachel Carey, named after a US peace activist who was crushed to death by an Israeli bulldozer in 2003, set off as part of the Gaza Freedom Flotilla to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. However, the journey was not straightforward, with the vessel encountering its fair share of trouble.
Israel has seized another aid ship trying to break the blockade of the Gaza Strip. This time there were no reports of violence, unlike Monday's raid, which left 9 activists dead.
What is your international call sign?
It's X-ray Juliet. It's X-ray uniform Juliet Whiskey.
Cargo.
It is humanitarian cargo. Over. Yes, our planned destination is Gaza. Over.
I guess it's your understanding also that the Israeli Navy cannot and will not allow you to reach Gaza. Is that the case?
Most of our equipment at the moment would be reconstruction, educational and toys. We are a small cargo vessel, as you can see. We're carrying less than 1,000 tonne of aid, and we are no threat to the Israeli people or the Israeli government. Over.
After a supposed sabotage by Mossad, calls from the Irish government for safe passage and a run-in with Israeli commandos, the ship was eventually allowed to dock with the aid. In recent years, the Irish state has shown continued support for Palestine through a number of proposed bills in the Dáil, Ireland's parliament. In 2014, the Dáil agreed to a motion tabled by Sinn Féin, Ireland's main opposition party, to officially recognise the state of Palestine on the basis of the 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital. In 2018, the Occupied Territories Bill was passed, which would have criminalised trade with territories deemed to be occupied in international law. Although it attracted the support of almost every party in the Dáil, it was effectively blocked by the sitting Fine Gael government. On the 26th of May 2021, the Irish Parliament passed a motion to condemn the de facto annexation of Palestinian land by Israeli authorities. The following day, the Irish flag was raised over Ramallah and the West Bank in solidarity. In 2023, Sinn Féin tabled a motion to compel state investment funds to sell off their holdings in firms operating in Palestinian territories, something supported in principle by the government. That said, Ireland is not among the 138 nations that recognise Palestine in an official capacity, with Taoiseach Leo Varadkar saying in 2017 that the government is open to recognising the state but only as part of a European-wide agreement, or, in other words, not at all. In the wake of the most recent crisis, Ireland was one of the EU states to condemn the proposed suspension of aid to Palestine. As the bombing of Gaza continues, Irish politicians continue to condemn it, with protests seen in the streets of Dublin. To quote Irish academic Dr. Rory Miller, even in the late 1940s, Palestine occupied a place in the Irish consciousness far greater than geographic, economic or political factors merited. And this affinity for Palestine in Irish society is something likely to continue well into the future.
Palestine! 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 Occupation no more!
Council is an independent media platform and our funding comes from you, the viewer. So if you enjoyed this episode, please give us the price of a pint on Patreon so we can continue to produce videos like this one. Every donation helps, and until next time, slán go fóill.